It seems to me that Tony Blair and the New Labour project was an attempt to Europeanise Britain by installing, as you described it, the unaccountable bureaucracy and allowing the politicians to essentially offload responsibility to the bureaucrats, the quangocracy, whatever you want to call it. Um, is it your intention to do what you can to remove these things from power?
Well, Tony Blair, as you know, I discount John Major as a sort of blip. He should never have won that 92 election with his soapbox, and we would have had Neil Kinnock, and probably that would have been the end of socialism. That could have been it. I don't know if you remember that rally where they were playing loud music thinking they had it in the bag, and somehow John Major won it by 15 seats, which he should never have done. I think it was 15 seats from memory.
I was a bit young, to be honest.
So let's ignore Major. Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, Tony Blair, the genesis of most of our problems, you can lay at the door of Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Peter Mandelson, Alistair Campbell, and Derry Irvine. And then Cameron, for some extraordinary reason, seemed to approve of what they did. So he tried to do a bit more himself, with the Bribery Act and various other things. So he was, in my view, a huge disappointment, as was Osborne. But Tony Blair's the genesis with all these, as you say, these laws and rules and regulations, which I think distorted the British Constitution. And as you say, created the quangos, the unelected bureaucrats who are still funded by the British taxpayer, who have complicated our law. Arguably, what they did with the Supreme Court undermined the basis of English justice. And I'm, English justice now probably needs to be reformed again. As you probably know, he played a big part in devolution, which I think was all part of the cunning plan of the European Union to destroy the proudest sovereign nation in Europe, which was us. So if you can create, I think they created us into 5 regions, I think I'm right in saying, but they also devolved power, with the Scottish Parliament and the Senate. And they were trying to sort of at every point disempower Westminster. That was part of their plan. And Blair, another lawyer, not a particularly good lawyer, I don't think.
That's what I've heard.
But he was a lawyer.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's a likely lad. You've got to give him credit for the fact that he is a hugely effective salesman.
He's a brilliant politician.
I think he's a brilliant politician. He was very, very believable. And, a lot of people who you would never have expected to vote Labour, in 97, they did vote Labour. Hence, we got Tony Blair in tears on the door of Downing Street, playing "Things Can Only Get Better" or whatever they were playing at the time, and everybody felt good. And then we got Cool Britannia and all the other rubbish. But no, so I lay a lot of the issues at their door, and I think if we, by 29, if what I call the common sense wing of Britain can establish itself and we can win an election under the right leadership, we need to start with a Great Repeal Act, which has to repeal a lot of this malign legislation.
Can you give me a list of things you do?
Well, things like, on my list, probably the Race Relations Act has to go. Probably the 97 Human Rights Act, which embeds within it the ECHR. Very definitely the Equality Act, which has to go. As I mentioned, the Bribery Act, the Supreme Court needs to be sorted out. But I think we need a plan now to repeal.
I happen to have a ready plan. We need to get rid of the Supreme Court. We need to get rid of the devolved assemblies.
Sounds like we're in rude agreement.
Oh, we are. The Communications Act needs
reforming. Nigel gave me a rocket because I gave a speech at the at the summer rally last September, where he told me I spoke for too long, so I spoke for 23 minutes. But I did offer to show him my speech. He said he never writes one. I write my speeches because I like a bit of history and a few quotes in it. And I did say, my view would be, let's reverse devolution. Let's return power to Westminster.
Has to be changed.
Let's be what we should be, which is one country. So I do think the strength of this country is as the Act of Union. We are one nation, and we should behave as one nation. And, the Brexit deal through the Northern Ireland Protocol and then latterly the Windsor Agreement actually has, if you like, carved out a piece of Britain. And we know why it was done. It was done because Michel Barnier thought he'd keep a hook on board our ship Worst case, they get a united Ireland. Best case, they hook us back into the EU. We all know what the game was, but unfortunately, Carl, the bureaucrats negotiating Brexit, which they'd been told to do by the British electorate, didn't believe in what they were doing. So they were doing their best to frustrate the instructions of the 17.4 million people who voted to take back our sovereignty.
See, this is one of the major points that's always frustrated me about Brexit. And you see people arguing against the concept of Brexit on the consequences of anti-Brexiteers running the show. So, I mean, for example, I was pointing out to people, well, Ireland has a corporate tax of 12.5%. We have 25%. That can't be accidental. There's exactly half of us.
Well, let me tell you what happened there, as you probably know. So Ireland was, it basically had a massive property boom and then a bust. So again, my view of it is that Ireland, despite all these so-called rules and laws and regulations, I mean, it's a bit like sort of France going into the EU and hiding a lot of their deficits through, I think it was French Telecom Pension Fund or something. But anyway, Ireland needed to be rebuilt. So how did they rebuild Ireland? I'll tell you how they did it. They set up a tax arbitrage. So they allowed Ireland to have the lowest rate of corporation tax in the EU. And guess what happened? Everybody based themselves in Ireland.
Oh, I know.
And Ireland got rich again, which it is now.
Yeah. So why aren't we doing the same thing?
So, well, this is part of my issue with Nigel. I thought we should have a plan. We should have policies. We should tell people what we were going to do. We should have a shadow cabinet. Yeah. This is the genesis of the issues between us.
Yes.
I told him, and I think I played a part with him and with the other reform people. And it's not just Nigel or me or anybody. It's a whole group of like-minded people who believe in what we were trying to achieve. But we need a plan, and I wanted the lowest corporation tax in Europe, which would have been 12.5%, as you quite rightly say. Then you'll get capital formation in the UK. You'll get people coming to set up businesses here.
See, I'm not an economist, but this is just very straightforward.
Why wouldn't we do that? Why would we charge our students so much for their student debt? Why do we encourage them to go and do these degrees which qualify them for nothing? And when you look at the book, we have a big apprenticeship scheme. Yeah. Why aren't we training people for a career that's actually going to give them a life skill that they can always fall back on?
If you would like to see the full version of this premium video, please head over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to gain full access to all of our premium content.